Good morning, everybody. Thanks for taking the time with me. I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about Agentic products and some of the perspective I've gained by working with them for the last few years and my background in product design and innovation and how we bring that forward into this generation of agentic workflows, products, and so on. A short version of me, just so you know where I'm coming from. I've spent my career at the intersection of design, workflows, emerging technology. I co-founded a company called Top, a design and innovation company who worked with 20 plus Fortune 100 companies on strategic innovation and digital product design. I co-created a platform called Noodle, an open source visual development environment that was an early adopter of agentic AI. And I co-founded, most recently, a company called Green Metrica, where we developed agentic platforms and workflows for ESG and investment reporting, recently acquired by a Swedish company called BIM Object. So I've been close to the shift that we're talking about, not in theory, but inside real organizations where stakes are deadlines, compliance, customer trust. And so we're going to dig into some of the observations and things I've been up to. I'm going to repeat this. I mean, I think everyone here knows the moment we're in. But historically, you can see software as a tool and the human, the one driving it. Software stored the information, software displayed the fields, software calculated the numbers. But we were the ones who had to search, check, compare, copy, paste, decide, and move work forward. The human, us, we were the agent, the one interpreting context and determining next steps. And that's changing. Before moving on, I want you to picture a specific person in your organization, not a role, not a department, a person. And this person, it's the one people go to when something is ambiguous, who remembers why a workflow changed last year, who knows where the edge cases really live, who quietly prevents mistakes the documentation doesn't cover. Their judgment is the glue that holds workflows together. Not just digital workflows, but human workflows. And when we talk about agents, we're not replacing this person. We're scaling what they might uniquely know. And almost as if they had 1,000 competent interns who could do real work. So hold that person in mind. Maybe that person is you, and we'll return to them. So now, today, if you've looked into some agentic promises on various platforms and applications coming out, we have systems that can parse unstructured documents, perform contextual reasoning, make step-level decisions, use tools, not just answer. They can search the web, query APIs, update CRMs, ERPs, generate documents, send structured notifications. And this is the key shift. Again, software can act with judgment, not just rules. And the action is performed inside of a workflow, not outside of it. And this is agency more than intelligence. And when I say an agentic system, we can mean that it understands context. It can decide the next action using reasoning, not rule trees. And it takes action in the workflow. It can monitor its own confidence, and it can ask for help when it's unsure. And it improves through feedback from real work via something called evals. It's not a chatbot. It's a big mistake. A lot of people come in with the assumption that an agent or agentic system or agentic workflow has to involve chatbots somewhere. It very rarely does. But it is software that participates. Another grounding point before we go further, agents are not standalone magic. Oh, there we go. They become meaningful when they're part of a workflow, part of often a bigger workflow within an organization or an offering. And workflows include multiple agents, just like your team does, and they each perform discrete steps, a specific judgment, a specific transformation, a specific escalation pattern. Think one agent extracts data from documents, another validates against standards, another drafts communication, another monitors for exceptions. It's coordination, not just capability. And that's where the real opportunity lies. So the central question becomes, where in your workflow, and which workflow, should an agent act? This is a question of product discovery, which takes us to how our default approach fails today. When organizations first get access to new AI capabilities, the reflex is almost always the same. What can the model do? So they run experiments, build demos, generate content, build a small AI feature, maybe hold a hackathon, present something cool to leadership. There's nothing wrong with that. It's how we get familiar. But here's the trap. Capability does not tell you where value is. Value doesn't appear where the model performs well. Value appears where the work is heavy. And heaviness has nothing to do with technical difficulty. It has to do where human time, attention, and judgment accumulate. So we need to look there instead. And it's not the first time we've gone through this cycle. When the web arrived, everyone built brochure websites. Very few built real databases. When mobile arrived, every company released an app. Very few built experiences shaped around mobility. And when machine learning expanded, everyone built dashboards. Very few changed decision-making loops. New technology always enters the organization through novelty and demonstration before it enters value. Agentic systems are no different. But the price of staying in demonstration phase is much higher this time because the organizations who do pivot to workflow level change will move faster, serve better, and compound learning. So this time the gap will widen, not gradually, but structurally. Before we get to the hard part, let's try to internalize the upside. So imagine you have those extra 1,000 capable assistants for yourself, for somebody on your team. Not junior, not low skill, but thoughtful, reliable, detail-oriented people. They don't get tired. They don't lose context across shifts. They don't forget the old edge cases. They know when to ask for help. What would you do? How would you deploy these 1,000 people? In sustainability, where I've spent some time, you wouldn't treat reporting as a fire drill every quarter. You treat it as a continuous capability, something that informs supplier relationships, pricing strategy, product decisions. In finance, diligence wouldn't be a bottleneck. It would be a living intelligence layer. In customer operations, you wouldn't just answer requests, you'd anticipate them. This is a promise, not automation of tasks, automation of judgment. Here's the part most organizations skip, though. To realize that upside, the workflow itself has to change so that agents can actually participate. If you plug an agent into a current workflow, it might get ignored, or it disrupts, or increases oversight. This is why we want to talk about product and platforms, not prompts, not models, not UI patterns. We're not designing an interface. We're designing where judgment happens and how that judgment gets shared, scaled, and governed. So value doesn't come from capability, and demos don't get us there. The agentic systems only work when workflows change. Then the real question, the strategic question is, where in the workflow should an agent act? This is not a technical problem, it's a product discovery problem. This is critical. The workflow diagram on the wall is a useful fiction. Real work happens in Slack threads, side conversations, unwritten rules, legal exceptions. Things learned the hard way. Traditional automation, RPA, workflow engines, macros, they follow the diagram. They do it pretty well. Agentic workflows can operate in a mess. They handle unstructured documents, conflicting systems, ambiguous supplier disclosures, human uncertainty, and they escalate when uncertain instead of guessing. So if we want to place agents well, we look not at the process map, but at where time actually goes, where people wish they had those 1,000 interns. That's the signal. And the signal is often a moment of strain. A moment of strain is where a human hesitates, cross-checks, chases missing information, feels nervous about being wrong. An example, in sustainability, analysts reconciling values across ERPs, PIM systems, supplier portals. In healthcare, teams deciding whether a symptom requires escalation. Manufacturing engineers triaging anomalies. Finance teams rewriting board narratives slides until the story feels right. These are not tasks. These are judgment points that carry risk, consume attention, and gate throughput. These are where agents can participate. And the strain comes from two sources that I've seen. Cognitive weight. The decision is complex, requires interpretation, context, rationale, and cognitive weight and volume weight. The decision is simple, but it happens 300, 500, 1,000 times every week. And again, going back to sustainability reporting, you might ask the question, does this disclosure meet this standard for this product in this market? They're not easy questions, but they happen often and require experience. The volume strain is we have 1,200 suppliers, all with different formats. In clinical care, cognitive might be, is this symptom concerning given the full treatment history? No. The volume might be, we answer the same triage question 400 times a day. In finance, the cognitive might be, does this funding plan hold under assumptions? The volume might be, normalize 80 messy Excel models before the meeting. Either kind of weight is a candidate, and when both are present, opportunities can be pretty big. So let's state this cleanly. Efficiency is not the goal. Efficiency is how we create capacity. And capacity is what we can invest into new value. New offerings, deeper service capability, more productive support, more strategic influence, internal innovation, supplier and ecosystem orchestration. If we only bank the savings, we miss the upside. If we invest the savings, we expand the organization, what the organization is capable of doing. Cost reduction and new value are the same mechanism pointed in different directions. So let's make it more concrete. In Green Metrica, my last company, we worked with BIM Object, who later acquired us, to provide structured product data for architecture and construction to help them reach these goals. And to meet global sustainability requirements, buildings require something called an environmental product declaration. And if you haven't been deep in this world, an EPD is a certified, standardized environmental impact report mandated by various governmental bodies. It must be accurate, it must follow international methodology, and it must be auditable. Traditionally, it takes 6 to 12 weeks for consultants to do. Multiple analysts have to get their fingers on it, and coordination across suppliers, product systems, manufacturing, data sources. And the work is messy, conflicting, with missing documents and nonstop judgment calls in the modeling assumptions. So we shadowed sustainability analysts doing this work. We identified the actual strain points, extracting values from inconsistent supplier documents, normalizing them into comparable units, matching them into correct product assemblies, checking against standards, requesting missing evidence, and reconciling inconsistencies. We broke the workflow down into agentic steps. One agent ingests documents and extracts structured data. Another validates, another generates a draft EPT model, another checks conformance and flags uncertainty. The outcome was report creation that went from months to hours. Accuracy also increased because agents were consistent in data handling. And this was no longer a service. It became a product, something that used to be time-consuming, manual, low-margin service work became a software product with recurring value, built on agentic workflows that scale. This is the pattern. And we can see this everywhere. Investment in venture analysts, analysis, clinical triage, symptom guidance, etc. And even things like personal training and therapeutic guidance. Whenever the work is judgment heavy, the stakes matter and the volume is high. Agentic workflows can unlock value that was previously impossible to scale, not by replacing expertise, but by multiplying its reach. And the pattern exists in consumer products as well. It's not just enterprise. I'm actually building 3 agentic apps myself for me and my family, for real, everyday use. One thing that's happened recently is my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she's undergoing chemo currently. What was not existing in the market, on the App Store, or in the services provided by healthcare was somebody who can support us along the way with information and data and advice in the sort of frequency that we needed it. So I'm building a chemo companion for her to support symptom interpretation day to day. I'm a big guy, so I try to train also. I failed many times. I'm also building a training system for myself that adapts exercise plans based on fatigue and motivation. I'm also building a corporate ownership research agent that handles complex reasoning chains. They're not chatbots, they're workflows, and the same patterns show up across consumer life. Just to give you more of an example of the fitness application I'm building, good training for me is not workout lists. It's ongoing interpretation, fatigue, mood, boredom, progression, injury, risk. And if I go to a personal trainer, they can realistically manage maybe 10 to 12 people, and they have one way of working with me. A training agent can track my actual performance every day at home. They can adjust load and volume, and they can learn how my body responds. And I can adopt any training style. As soon as I get bored of one trainer, I can go to the next. And I can take in YouTube videos and content and training manuals and always have the best expertise from the world. Hopefully I can scale this one day and multiply these trainers for other people too. The work here is not access, it's also interpretation. And the relationship becomes the product. So there's a whole bunch of qualities that come with agents and new types of products that you can create. And we see the same pattern. Judgment to context, to escalation, to workflow placement. So whether it's health, training, finances, we're not automating tasks. We're scaling judgment carefully and with guardrails. That's the shift. So I've been talking about what agentic systems can unlock so far. But how do we find those opportunities? It's not feature ideation. It's not prompt experimentation. It's not try AI and see where it sticks. And it's not innovation theater. Product discovery, say it again. And in this context, product discovery means observing real workflows, identifying real strain, breaking the work into meaningful units of judgment, choosing where an agent should participate, and iterating directly with domain experts. This is design-inspired, but not design thinking theater. We're using methods you may already know. Contextual inquiry, decision mapping, service blueprints, scenario walkthroughs. But we're applying them to a different question. Where should judgment live in the system, not what interface should we build? It's a different job. So we got to get to the point that most organizations underestimate. The value of an agentic system is not defined at build time. It is defined in iteration. Because what we're really doing is taking the judgment of an expert we talked about earlier, making it explicit, and then scaling it. It's not prompt tuning or set the config and walk away. It's a conversational loop between the person who understands how the work actually happens and the system learning how to participate in it. The agent gets better because the expert explains why decisions are made and the way they are. That, not the model, is the heart of the process. You may have heard of something called evals. And when most people hear the word evals, they think of machine learning metrics, academic benchmark data sets, and that's not what we mean here. In agentic product work, an eval is simply a real example from the workflow with the correct outcome and the reasoning behind it. That's it. It's a real case from real work with the decision annotated and the explanation of why the decision is correct. You don't need 10,000 of these. You need dozens placed at the right judgment points in the workflow. And this is where the domain expert becomes the trainer, not by labeling massive data sets, but by teaching the system how to think step by step, like you would teach an intern. But now you're teaching maybe 1,000 of them. You teach it, here's why we do it this way. This is an exception pattern. This is when we escalate. The system learns the shape of judgment, not just the outcome. Let's make it real with one more example. I worked with a venture group evaluating early stage companies. They wanted to multiply their throughput. Historically, one senior financial leader would review the pitch deck, the financial model, the market sizing, team background, and then reconcile all that into a judgment narrative, a presentation, take it to IC, what have you. This took days per company they would evaluate. When we observed the real workflow, the strain showed up in normalizing financial models because everyone sends a different version, different structure, checking assumptions for coherence, summarizing material risks, drafting the written rationale, and doing this again and again across dozens of companies. And the aspiration was not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands. So we built an agentic workflow. One agent ingests the pitch, extracts core claims. Another analyzes the financial model. Another checks benchmarks and comparables. Another drafts an investment memo. And the human expert reviews only the reasoning. The domain expert didn't create training data. They simply added comments to the system's output, and those comments became the evals. Cycle by cycle, the agent learned the firm's way of thinking. What used to take days took hours. But an important part is this. The quality of the decisions also went up. This is part of the model. So, to iterate, we start with real work cases, meaning actual examples from the workflow. Not synthetic prompts, not lab samples. These are situations that really happen day to day. Then, an agent should attempt the work. It tries to take the step a human would normally make. And building these things is not that expensive. Honestly, it's not. You can get your first versions up and going in hours. Then the expert reviews the agent's output and provides corrections, not by rewriting everything and not by giving generic feedback, but by explaining why a certain decision is right or wrong. This is the key. It's the reasoning we are transferring, not just the answer. Those corrections become evals, which are simply captured cases with the correct outcome, an explanation behind it, and over cycles, the agent improves. The core principle here is the expert is not teaching the system tools. The expert is teaching the system how to think. So, observe real workflows, find the moments of strain, break them into steps, iterate on your reasoning, and perhaps one of the most difficult things is to reinvest capacity into new value if you want to create platforms, products, not just efficiencies. And this process can be reliable, repeatable, teachable. It's not guesswork. It's not prompt trickery. It can work. So let's return to our person that we've been imagining at the beginning, the one who holds the gray zone judgment, the one who knows how the workflow actually behaves under pressure, and the one somebody trusts. In an agentic workflow, this person becomes the teacher of the system, and that doesn't mean they're writing rules or configuring tools, or again, they don't have to label things. It's just some evals and observations. Their judgment becomes legible to the system and therefore scalable. This is not replacement, something a lot of people are worried about. This is amplification. Typically, these domain experts, these people who hold the keys in your organization to these workflows, are not the ones you could hire anyway to scale your organization, either because of viability or feasibility. And it fundamentally can change their role, and I think we should expect this moving forward. They move from being the person who has to touch everything personally, every decision, even if they're just going through mundane Excel sheets every day for months and years. but they become the person who defines how decisions are made at scale. For many experts, this isn't a loss of identity. Hopefully, it's a step into leadership. So, who does this work? This agentic observation and modeling. This part can be surprising. You don't need a large team. You don't need a dedicated AI group. You do not need a lab or innovation pod. You need 4 capabilities, not even job titles. The domain expert, they are critical. If we're going down this route of identifying and building value in workflows, they're critical. And it doesn't have to be a PhD in a lab somewhere. It could be the person, again, who just knows how things work in your company. Most often, you're a domain expert as well, somewhere in a workflow. Second, you need a workflow observer. We're really bad at saying how we do things in detail and really understand it. I'm hopeful that the field of things like UX research or service design and product-minded PMs, that they are going to take on this role as we scale forward. People who are traditionally very good at seeing how something is done, not just recording what's told to them or reading the manual. You also need the system shaper, the person who breaks a workflow into meaningful agent steps, the architecture of participation, so to speak. This can be a product strategist, a technologist, senior engineer, could be your product owner as well. But they should understand both the business logic and the constraints of what agents can reliably do. You need to really understand what's going on behind the scenes with the models at this point and what their various capabilities are. And then you need the agent builder, the person who implements and the orchestration and tool use, connecting the agents to real systems. Very rarely does an agentic application fully define itself. It's connected to the systems in your organization and the assets that you have. And integration is a real thing, and real software development is a real thing, and there's less agentic stuff in the agentic application than you think. It's just those judgment points, and then it connects to traditional software development. But you need that person who can make it work. The point of all of this is that it's not an AI team. It's a small cross-functional discovery unit. 3 people, 6 people, 2 is minimum. You can get it done, especially the early versions. So the mindset of these people also matters critically. Curiosity, willingness to observe real work, comfort with iteration, and respect for expertise that wasn't written down anywhere. And if you have those capabilities, you can do this. If you're leadership, your role is not to ask for a demo or pilot or feature level roadmap in this process. Your role is to choose where to explore based on strategic priority, and then protect the team from being pulled back into the old workflow the moment things get uncomfortable. And there's one more responsibility for leadership. Ensure the capacity you create is reinvested, not just taken as efficiency. If you only bank the savings, you get cost reduction, but you miss the new product. You miss the leap. The organizations that will push ahead in this era are the ones that treat agentic workflows as a strategic capability, not as a side experiment. So this one sounds a bit strange. Agents, the LLMs, the black boxes, they're stakeholders too. They're not features, they're participants in a way. And just like a new hire, they need clarity about their role. They need guidance on escalation. They need structure, guardrails, and review. They need ongoing correction and feedback. If you treat them like disposable scripts, they break, they drift, they get ignored, and confidence collapses. If you treat them like participants, they learn, they stabilize, and they scale their judgment. And trust needs to form between stakeholders. Trust needs to form between you and the agents. And maybe it's a leap to say the agents need to trust you, but they need support. And this is where product discovery becomes organizational change, and where the future of work starts to feel real. So the human expert at the top, and the expert provides feedback and correction. And across the middle, we have the agents operating inside the workflow and the reality of how the work is actually done. At the bottom, the foundation to building, the people who are the product team. And the message here is simple. The agent does not replace the agent. The agent learns from the expert and scales. So now we know where to look for value, how to break workflows into agentic steps, how judgment is transferred through iteration, and who needs to be involved. Which means we can finally talk about the part everyone wants to talk about, the kinds of products and capabilities this unlocks. Not a hype version, an operational version. What becomes possible now that was not before. So agentic workflows are going to allow organizations to provide a depth of service that used to require headcount. They're going to allow organizations, companies to personalize at a level that used to require dedicated human attention. They're also going to transform work that was too manual to scale into product value. And they're going to create leverage where there used to be bottlenecks. This is what shifts organizations from we do this as a service to we offer that as a product. So there's a few classes of opportunity here. This is where agents handle parts of the workflow where uncertainty, nuance, or inconsistencies slow everything down, de-risking complex judgment. An example might be procurement agents that validate supplier evidence and chase missing documentation, clinical triage that guide patients through symptom patterns, manufacturing quality agents that analyze anomalies, legal contract review, etc. The key to these examples is not automation, it's judgment under uncertainty. Scaling human guidance, you should think fitness training, health self-management, financial planning, language learning, career development, therapy support. These products are not just recommendation generators. They ask clarifying questions, adjust in real time, respond to who the person is today, not last week, and escalate when meaning or safety is unclear. And then there's service to product, which I've hit that note a couple times, but it's when work requires specialized reasoning, repeated steps, documentation, auditability, often where knowledge work is today. And it's typically lived in services. But now if the reasoning can be made legible to the system and the workflow can be broken into agentic units, then service can become product. Service, extract judgment, agentic workflow, product, it's a pattern we keep seeing over and over again. When we begin in a world where the expert performs the steps manually, they're doing the interpretation, the normalization, etc. This is where most service work lives today. This is where we're looking for transformation. What was once manual, slow, limited, becomes a product that delivers the value continuously and at scale, without requiring the expert to touch every instance. Our experts aren't removed. We're amplifying their judgment to make the product possible. And so companies who are exceeding have a strategy that look like this, as we've gone through it before. Observe, identify strain, break into steps, iterate with evals, and reinvest capacity. So you don't need your research team, a transformation office, a data set strategy, a hub and spoke AI center. You need one workflow. So pick a part of the organization where decisions are repeated. Find the person who carries the real judgment and watch them work. Just start there on Monday. The work begins with observation, not invention. And to say something kind of simple, this work is not particularly new. There's nothing mystical about this process. We're not inventing a new discipline. We're not discarding what we already know. We are taking the clarity of product thinking, the empathy of design research, the rigor of workflow mapping, the craft of modeling judgment, and the patience of iteration, and applying them to a new class of capabilities. The technology is new. The work is familiar, and that's the good news, because it means you probably already have people who can do this. And the key principle you should go away with here is that agentic value appears where human judgment meets scale. Not where models are impressive, demos look flashy, or executives are excited, but where work is repetitive, meaningful, and bottlenecked by finite people who truly understand it. So start looking there. I'm going to ask you to not go back to your organization and ask for tools or play with prompts or an AI lab. I'm going to ask you or the people around you to just start looking. And if you do that, you will find the opportunities that others will miss. Thank you for your attention. If any of this resonated, I'd be happy to continue the conversation about your workflow, your experts, or where you're stuck. The work is very meaningful to me. I'd love to help you think through it. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.